Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first of our Open Arms Meet the Researchers talk for 2022. My name is Natalie Ford, and today we have three speakers from Equator, and you'll hear more about what Equator is later, and that's Patricia Lagulo, Paula Demon, and Jen de Beer. But before we start with them telling us a little bit more about Equator, we have Laura Coates, who's going to tell us a bit more about the Open Arms Network. Laura.
Lovely, thank you very much. So welcome to NDORMS Open Arms Meet the Researcher. I'm the academic lead for patient involvement across our NDORMS group. And as some of you will know, I'm sure we run these every month and have different researchers presenting research each time. But this session is a little bit different and special. We've had a takeover bid by the Equator team, who are here to talk to you for this whole session. And they're a group that sit within our NDORMS group, but actually have much wider interests. So beyond musculoskeletal disease, where most of us focus, into quite a lot of other disease areas. And as you'll hear, Equator look at accurate reporting and trying to improve the way we report and share our research so that everybody gets the best benefit moving forwards. So we're delighted to be able to help Equator with their takeover today and launch their patient involvement, to boost their patient involvement across the work that they do. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Laura. We're going to move to our first speaker, Patricia, who's going to tell us a little bit more about Equator. Patricia.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you everybody to meet us today. We are starting this PPI thing, and we are very, very happy that you are here. So I work at the CSM, the Center for Statistics in Medicine. But I'm not a doctor, I'm not a pharmacist, I'm not a chemist. How did I end up here? I am a journalist, a reporter. To answer that, I need to talk to you about my little bit of my story, okay? So I come from Brazil, where I come from a family that's full of doctors everywhere. My aunts, my uncles, my sister, my cousins. It was a bit of a lunchtime on Sunday conversation. So I got my ear a little bit trained about medical stuff, but I was intrigued about how they communicated between themselves, with their patients, with the public in general. And they frequently came to me to ask for help with that, to edit their text, their papers, their reports, and even to talk to the press, for example. So this became a trade of mine. I became working as a medical writer in Brazil. And then I was not feeling that I was doing enough to improve everybody's health. So I started doing research too. So basically, I invaded the lab. I am an outsider, but I love to do what I do. Then when I did so, I started researching my master's degree, in my PhD in medical schools. I met some very nice people, the Equator team, and they invited me to come to Oxford to work with them. So what is Equator? In a nutshell, Equator works for enhance the quality of medical reports in general. It's an international organization that was founded around 15 years ago here in Oxford, but then we spread all over the world. So we have Equator centers everywhere. Even in China, we have a new Equator center in China now. And what we do, we research ways to improve the quality of research and the quality of research reports. And you may be wondering, why is that important? Well, the thing is, when we do research, when we test our ideas of a new treatment or a new thing that we can do to improve people's health, we get the results, and then we have to report those results somewhere, right? And they end up in medical journals. Medical journals are a kind of niche publication that is read by every clinician around the world and other researchers too. It's not intended to go to the public, but it's your right to know about them, because in the end, the tax you pay funds the research they do. We do. So we should report it better. So whenever a medical researcher finds something, they publish reports in journals that maybe you're not now more familiar with, like the BMJ, the Lancet, Nature. Yes, probably you know the names, but have you ever read a medical paper before? This is our first poll today. Natalie, can you put it on for us? So have you ever read a medical research paper in a medical journal? I mean, not the thing that goes in the Guardian or the Times. I mean, real medical paper. Wow, I see that half of you have already searched for a medical paper. That's very nice. Very nice indeed. I see that 20% had something recommended to you. Yeah. So you probably found that these papers are a bit difficult to read. It's not a nice reading, is it? That's for you. For us, on the other side of the counter, the problem with these reports is that they are incomplete. They are not reporting every method and every result that they got. And why is that important? So I like to give you an example. When you go to your kitchen and you decide you want to bake a cake, you probably know how to do that, right? You take the eggs, the milk, the flour, whatever, and you do it because you are used to do that. But if you give me a recipe for a cake, I'm going to be lost because I'm terrible with cooking. I don't know how to do that. And then if you forget to put in your recipe that I need to preheat my oven, fail. This cake is not happening, guys, because I don't know how to do that. And if you don't give me that basic first step, it's all going to ruin. This is what Equator works with. We work with a thing called reporting guidelines. Reporting guidelines are recipes. They are reminders. They are checklists of things that other researchers need to report. Because if I do a research here to find a solution, for example, for malaria, another researcher there in Africa, in Asia, needs to read that thing and understand everything I did and how I did it, with what resources, what equipment, how many patients, etc., for them to replicate that there and treat their patients, right? If they don't know how I did it, how are they going to treat their patients well? So this works the same way as the recipe. Or if you wish, a shopping list. If I go to the supermarket without my shopping list, I am going to forget. I'm doing shopping for my whole life. I know how to do that, guys. But I need the list because otherwise I will forget. Even being an experienced researcher or an experienced doctor, everybody can forget. So what Equator does is that we provide reporting guidelines for every researcher around the world through our website. We develop those reporting guidelines and we research about how they improve research reportings, those papers we were talking about. Because if they start to report less than they should, this is a kind of research waste. The research is done with your money, the money you pay for taxes, charities, etc., etc. So you should be able to get the full use of it. So right now, what I am doing as a researcher, I am developing 2 reporting guidelines. I am developing Accord and Tripod AI. And how do we do that? We gather lots of experts in that particular area, and we talk to them, and we do surveys, sometimes anonymized, sometimes they have to sign it. And there are lots of steps that we need to follow to develop any guideline. For example, a clinical guideline too. I wonder if you would like to participate and to give your say, have your say about how we develop those reporting guidelines. This is the main thing we would like to do today by launching our PPI event. Invite you to participate in our reporting guidelines. I'm going to talk to you later about this, but I would like you to tell us, would you be interested in participating in a group that will develop a reporting guideline for medical researchers? So one of those checklists, we are producing one of those, and we need the participation of the public. This is new. Other reporting guidelines have never invited people from the public to participate, but now we think we should, and we think we should have you with us. Would you like to participate? I see someone is asking about payment. We don't know about that yet, probably not, because it's going to be online and not presential every time. I don't know about that yet. I just want to know if you think you should have a say in what we report. Yes, yes, great, great. I'm happy to see that. Most of you are interested or will forward this to a friend, to someone. That's very nice. So let me tell you about my 2 specific projects, right? So the first reporting guideline I'm working with is Accord. Name is Accord. The thing is, when doctors don't have the best evidence available to treat a disease or to deal with a public health problem, like we did with COVID. Remember, in the beginning, we didn't know how to do that. We didn't know how to treat or how to prevent COVID. We didn't have the evidence available. That happens more frequently than you think. Sometimes we don't have evidence, and still we have to make decisions about dealing with health problems. In those cases, the way we deal with that is recommendations from an expert group. They gather and they discuss to reach consensus, to agree what is the best way to go. The problem is they don't report about those consensus meetings very well. We end up with a good recommendation, but we don't know how they did it. How many people met? Who were those people? If there were enough women, enough people from minorities. We don't know anything about how these people meet to reach consensus. So I would like to deal with that and to produce a reporting guideline for reporting consensus meetings. I want researchers to tell us how did they organize the consensus, what steps they took, how did they, what are the rules they decided on to reach consensus, right? So this is one reporting guideline, and for that, for Accord, we want to invite the public for online surveys, and then in the end, the consensus meetings, okay? That's one. So the other one I'm involved with proudly with Paula and other members of the Equator group is Tripod AI. So we already have a very nice reporting guideline called Tripod. That's for prediction models. So what are prediction models? They are ways that you can predict a risk for a disease or for a health event like a fall, for example, to happen. We already have a reporting guideline for that, but the problem is lately more and more researchers are using computers to develop prediction models. So they train robots, they train computers to learn from a very large amount of data from medical records, data from imaging exams, for example, X-rays, tomographies, MRIs, and these computers build prediction models. And you know what? Again, they are being reported poorly. When we try to read these papers, and Paula does that a lot because she works with that, she suffers to find the information she needs to progress research. We are working on a reporting guideline for that. That's Tripod AI, Tripod for Artificial Intelligence. And we already finished the online forms, the online survey part of the project, but we need members from the public to participate in our consensus meeting. We will have that soon. If you are interested, please contact us and we will send you the invitation. Okay? So Natalie, I think it's time for us to hand this to Paula for her to talk more about those marvelous things that are prediction models.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Patricia. Paula, do you want to go ahead and tell us a bit more?
Excellent, thank you. Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, Patricia. Thank you to OpenArms for the invitation to talk about our research today. And, thank you all for taking the time out of your day, to get to know me, my research, a little bit more about the methods-based research that takes place at the Equator Network, and obviously all about reporting guidelines as well. Very much appreciated. So just a little bit of an intro about myself. I'm Paula Demon. I'm a senior researcher in medical statistics, and kind of the opposite to Patricia. I've always been a researcher. We both work at the Centre for Statistics in Medicine with the Equator Network, all housed in the University of Oxford. And I mean, my background, I have a maths degree. I did maths at university. And from there, I was just really quite interested in medical statistics, which I studied further, basically. And what I found really with kind of how, my skill set that I've developed over the years, it's just that, what I wanted for myself was that to apply my skill set, to apply what I know in a way that helps people. And so with that, and what medical statistics has allowed me to do is to, to have my say, to have my input in how research is done and to try and improve it, improve the evidence that is presented to the patients, to the public, and in essence, try and improve patient benefit and health moving forward. And, so even though I'm kind of one or two steps removed from, the front line, the doctors you see day to day, I kind of still feel like I'm contributing with what I know and what I can. And so I found this bit to be quite a rewarding kind of career path that I've taken and that my degrees allowed me to take as well. In terms of my research that I do, it's quite varied, but it all focuses on one thing, which is prediction modeling. So one day I may find myself working with kind of like patient level data, which has been anonymized, and I'll perform kind of different types of analyses, and I'll try and develop my own prediction model for a certain disease, a certain health outcome, and something that a doctor perhaps has approached me thinking, we want to be able to predict X, Y, and Z for my patients, and I can, we've got some data, I'll go away and try and do that to the best of my ability. So that's when I've really got hands-on, when I get quite hands-on with data and the analysis that I do. The other thing I tend to do as well is just to review what other people are doing in my field, in essence. So, I review what's already been done. And what I do in this is just to assess the models that are being developed and in essence assess their quality. And obviously being a part of Equator and reporting guidelines, there is an interest on the quality of reporting of these papers, which Patricia quite rightly has said isn't that great. There's definitely room for improvement. But in addition to that, I also look at the methodological kind of quality. So what are the methods they've done? How well have they used them? Could they be better? And so on and so forth. So with all of that information, so with kind of my hands-on experience that I get with working with data and, the reviews that I do of what's already been done, I use that information to try and help develop reporting guidelines. So as Patricia has mentioned, I'm working with her on the reporting guideline for prediction modeling using artificial intelligence. And in essence, with that, what we're trying to do is, kind of highlight those key details. What are the key details that need to be, as a minimum, be reported in these type of studies? And then when it comes to methods guidance, what I'm trying to do there is, just look at the different methods that are available, which are the best ones to use. And again, try and evaluate those and then help improve the methods, that other researchers can then do. So kind of create that guidelines for other researchers. So not only am I improving my own practice, but it offers information to other researchers who are interested in developing a prediction model to improve their research as well. So trying to get into a bit of a win-win. And as I said, through this, my aim is really to improve the quality of future research, ensure the best research is being done, the best methods are being done, and in essence, so the best evidence is then being produced to help improve patient benefit. So we've said this term a few times, so prediction. And prediction is a thing that really it affects all areas of our lives really on a daily basis. Anywhere from do I need to take my umbrella out on a walk this afternoon? You look outside, you look at the weather. We had enough experience of that to know, oh, it's looking a bit grey. Maybe I should take my umbrella. And in essence, we're predicting if it rains. And based on that, the action is, should I take my umbrella or not? And so in medicine, it's very similar. We basically take out the information we have presented to us right now. There could be some patient information, their characteristics at a certain time point. And with that, we use to predict whether a patient is ill right now. So we use that to diagnose a patient or not. Or we can use that information to say, well, actually, what's the probability of this person having a health event, a heart attack, breast cancer possibly, in the future basically. So whether 1 year, 2 year, up 10 years down the line, whenever's of interest. And based on that, there are certain then actions we can take. There is, if we're diagnosing patients, that's then informing what medication they should be taking possibly, whether they need surgery or something else. If it's in the future, are there certain changes we can make now such that in the future we're reducing our risk, our probability of having that event that we're predicting. So as you can see, it's affecting us on many levels. It affects us on with patient behavior. So, just our day-to-day, as I say, if my risk is of an event in 5 years is driven by certain characteristics that I have, I may want to change those. And so I'm reducing my risk for the future. But it also affects us on even a policy level and allows us to plan for resources as well. So, particularly if you think about in the NHS, if we have an idea, if we can predict, if there's going to be a certain health kind of condition that's going to be causing problems further down the line, we may want to plan for that right now. And in essence, so what we see is that these models, these prediction models that we're using, which combines this information together to give us our risk, is being used quite widely in the NHS. We see them in our GPs, with our GPs in primary care and hospitals. And as I say, they are very much present behind the scenes in these settings. In terms of how they're presented, it ranges. We could have, a model. It could be simple enough that we can write on the back of an envelope. But with the amount of information that is available to us now, and the capabilities of computers as well, these models can be quite complicated. And with that, they usually as an online calculator. They're embedded in computer systems that doctors can then use. So I just wanted to go to a poll very quickly, just to ask, have you ever discussed or calculated your risk of a disease with your doctor? Just quick yes or no, and see what your experience has been with these magical things. Okay, that's thank you for responding. But it looks, I mean, 61%, you know, having these kind of discussions and seeing these calculations take place. I think very much, you know, there is experience out there of, you know, interacting with these calculators, with these models, and so being affected by them. So what I just wanted to do now is actually just show you what it looks like in an online, as an online calculator very quickly, and just want to run through a few scenarios basically. So what I have here is Q cancer. It's a risk prediction model. It's a prediction model for cancer, any cancer, and it's, as I say, this is one of the models we'll see more, you know, with our GPs when we're discussing risk of cancer. So now, if I were to then just enter some information, let's say we're working with a female, and you know she's 55, leave the postcode, non-smoker, terms of drinking, let's say 1 to 2 units per day. You know, she's got history of breast cancer, a family history of breast cancer, but overall she seems to be quite well. But I mean, the reason for her coming to see her GP at this point is that she's found a lump in her breast. So with all that information, so we won't check any of the additional kind of problems because, you know, she feels fine. It's just that she's found this lump. It's not painful, so we don't need to check anything there. And, you know, there's no issues in terms of bowel habit, change in bowel habit, constipation, nothing like that. Let's say she's, you know, 177 centimeters, around 5'8". And she's 85 kilos, so around 12 plus stone. Let's calculate her risk. So what this then pops up is, you know, a breakdown of her risk. And in essence, you know, her risk of having any cancer is around 20% here, which is relatively quite high. And as what we can see, it does a further breakdown in that actually, if we were to look at her risk of breast cancer, that's really what is driving her risk of overall cancer, you know, having an undiagnosed cancer here. So based on this, the GP that she is seeing may want to then send her off for further testing in hospital. So they'll be ending up in a referral. But let's say now, if we were to change that, so change her characteristics. So say if we're looking at somebody who's slightly younger, let's say she's 49, you know, it's the pandemic after all, maybe she's drinking a little bit more these days, you know, still has a family history of breast cancer, but she hasn't got a lump. Everything else stays the same. Let's keep her height and her weight the same as well. And if we were to calculate that risk, and it's just driven down massively. So we can see that actually finding a lump in your breast could be driving, you know, in this particular scenario, is driving this patient's case, her risk quite high. Taking that out, it modifies. So in this instance, it may be that we keep the patient for the surveillance for a little bit longer, whatever they decide between the patient and the doctor themselves. But just to really illustrate how these prediction models are working in terms of how we see them. But in terms of behind the scenes, might be a little bit different. So, you know, as I say, that was just kind of like one example of a calculator, but there are many out there. And as I say, they are playing a key role behind the NHS. And so with my research, what we have, so I'm just going to share my screen again. But I mean, this is in essence what the scenario is that we've got this like heap of, you know, patient information that's been collected, you know, coming from medical records, you know, kind of in general, just entry. And this is, you know, it's anonymized, tends to be quite large. It's very comprehensive, can be quite complicated as well, but that is entering some kind of black box, which is what is popping out the risk. So we see that calculator, we've entered those bits of information, it pops out this probability that we then need to work with. What my research does is basically look at that black box specifically. I want to know how well that black box has been created, how well it works, how accurate it is, how reliable it can be as well. Because as I say, this information that we're getting, we are basing our actions on it, our behaviors, you know, because this information is potentially we are making potentially life-changing decisions based on this information. It's only right that these models are reliable and they are accurate. But all that comes down to is how well that little black box has been made, basically. So specifically,
okay, sorry about that. We seem to have lost Paula. I think probably while we wait for her to rejoin, what we're going to do is just go to some of the questions that we've been asked, if that's all right. So our first question is that someone's asked, they say that the medical journals, the peer-reviewed journals, form obviously a role in assuring the quality of published research, and that kind of makes them gatekeepers. So are Equator looking at improving how journals work, I guess, is what they are trying to say. So are you working with journals themselves and not just with the researchers? Patricia, I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
Yes, of course. I think that Jen will like to say a little bit about that too, but we try to work closely with journals, looking at their experiences with authors and peer reviewers, etc. We do what is called meta research, so the research about the research. And that involves contact with the journals, of course, because we want them to facilitate authors to report better, right? Jen?
Yeah, so exactly what Patricia said. There's also a question there, which is journals versus peer reviewers, where I'm sure that a lot of you are aware that the journals take in the articles, but then the articles get sent out to peer reviewers, and those peer reviewers are other researchers. So that's who's actually doing the peer review. So as well as working with journals, we also need to work with researchers to improve the way they do the peer review, because they're effectively the gatekeepers. The journals, yes, they are the ones doing the publishing the research, but how the journal gets to decide what should go into them or not, what they should publish or not, is very much determined by what peer reviewers say. And the peer reviewers are effectively the peers, the same researchers as the ones sending in the papers. So that any form of education that we're doing that helps researchers to report is also going to help researchers who peer review. And we do some work with peer reviewers directly. And in fact, Paula, who unfortunately just lost, is involved in setting up a course to help peer reviewers to improve the way they do peer review.
Excellent. Thanks very much. I think we had a couple of questions, but I think you've probably covered that. While we're here doing questions, there's another question about are there any similarities between Equator and the Cochrane collaboration? Perhaps you might want to explain a bit about what Cochrane is to people who may not know. Do you work with them directly? How does that work?
Yes. I have worked with Cochrane for a few years, so I know a little bit about them. Cochrane designed a method of systematic review. So it's a review of all the trials available about one intervention, about one specific way to treat disease. And they have their website, and they have their own channel of publication. It's like if they were a journal. They are a journal, a medical journal, but focused on systematic reviews. That's just one part of all the medical research that we have. So we have systematic reviews, we have trials, we have studies that are observational. That means they only observe how populations deal with problems, and many other types of studies. So Cochrane deals with just one of them. Okay, I hope I clarified a little bit.
Okay, so sorry about that technical difficulty there, but hopefully it'll all work seamlessly now. But basically where I'd stopped was just talking a little bit about where my research is picking up around prediction modeling, and that I'm interested in how that little black box is working that is basically giving you your risk, because you know that needs to be of good quality. It needs to be giving you an accurate probability of you having a disease, because we are potentially making, you know, life-changing decisions around that. And what I'm particularly looking at, and Patricia's kind of mentioned this as well, is that, you know, there is a definitely an increase in popularity of using artificial intelligence to help us, you know, create these models that will give us our risk. And what we want to do is that basically assess the quality of these. What I did one of my reviews. I went away and had a look at a collection of, these research papers that were developing prediction models specifically using artificial intelligence. And what I found within there were some issues, two of which were, one was that not enough data was being used to develop the models, and also that the data wasn't being used in the best way it could. And, I picked up on these problems and I put together a project to develop guidance that's going to basically help researchers and tell them and guide them as to how much data they should be using when they are developing a prediction model using artificial intelligence in their little scenario, in their clinical scenario. Happy to report that this project's actually just recently been funded by Cancer Research UK as well. And so in this project, I'm going to do three things. So the first thing is that I'm going to, and there's no real fancy way of putting this, is that I'm going to make up data. I'm going to make up data such that it's going to be similar to the type of data we see, in practice. And it's going to be a very wide range of scenarios that I'm going to be creating this data for. And I'm going to basically develop these models in each of those data sets that I create. And I'm going to look at how well the model is working, how accurate the risk is, and how reliable in essence it is. So that's going to be the first part of my project. The second part is I'm going to do something quite similar, but instead of make up my own data, I'm actually going to use data that already exists. So it's going to be anonymized patient data that, patients have consented for us to use. And I'm going to do something very similar. I'm going to create a lot of models on that, a lot of prediction models, and just basically assess how well they're working. And with that, because the main thing I'm going to be changing is kind of the amount of data that's being used to develop these models, that will give me an idea of actually then how much data I should be using and how much data others should potentially be using as well. And then the third part of the project is really to combine the first and second parts into and present it in a nice web application. So it's easy for people to be using and that they will want to use it, and more people use it, the better models that hopefully will be developed, and the better evidence that we'll then have to use. So you're probably thinking like, okay, that sounds great. Sample size, fantastic. We need to be using enough data. What's that got to do with me as patients and public? It's your data, in essence, that are being used to develop these models. The ones that I have reviewed, they were using patient level data, and it's my data as well, as a patient. And it's only fair that we use your data to maximize the benefit we can get. We want to be valuing it as we should be, and using it in the best way possible, such that we're actually, that we're actually making those positive changes moving forward in healthcare as well. So for this project, it would be really nice to get some PPI interaction and to talk to folks like yourselves, and really discuss what your concerns are in terms about how your data is being used in this context, within prediction and being used in medical research, and really how also in terms of how I do my project and how it comes for me to then tell people about my project and how I can best relay this information to others, such that it increases usability. Because again, I don't want to just be creating these projects and they just they're hidden away. We want to get it out there, and it needs to be communicated in the best way possible, and that's really what I'm looking for with this. So just finally, although I'm slightly hesitant to share a screen again, but just to end, as I say, if you're interested in getting to know a little bit more about both my project and Patricia's project, please do drop us an email. We're both, Patricia and myself are both on Twitter as well. I'll pop all of this information into the chat so you can copy it, so don't worry about writing it down. And as I say, just linking back to the fact that Equator as a whole is we're developing our own PPI group, and we would love to hear from you. And so if you are interested in that, if you could send a blank email to equator@csm.ac.uk, just with the subject heading of Equator PPI, we'll keep you in the loop as to how that then progresses and how we can get you involved as well, and how you could be involved even. And I will leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paula. Sorry about the issues we had with the connection there. Hopefully it all made sense and that we didn't miss out some vital part of the information that you needed. We've had a few more questions come in. Some of them are quite practical about payment and what exactly is involved with the PPI process. Jen's going to be talking later and she can perhaps contradict me, but at the moment, as I understand it, it's all at the very early stages. We'll be following standard guidelines for things like PPI payments. And if you sign up, as Paul has just suggested, then you'll get more information about the kind of real nitty-gritty of what's actually involved. If you do send an email, obviously you're not committing to anything at that stage other than just finding out a bit more. So if you are interested in finding out sort of more details, then probably the easiest way is just to sign up for that email list, and then they will keep you in the loop there. So we've had a couple more things come in since. So talking about prediction models, there's someone here who's interested in how often prediction models ask about things like passive smoking or pollutions from busy roads and stuff like that, or perhaps whether that data can, the pollution one, can be extracted from postcodes when you're looking at data.
Yeah, so with that, in terms of the information that's required to run any particular model, it really just depends on the area itself. So for one, passive smoking or smoking status, etc., it may be an important bit of information that we need to be able to predict a risk, but in other cases it might not. So it really does depend from model to model. And when we're looking at more environmental factors, that is a different kind of realm of prediction modeling. It definitely exists. Yeah, so I think, sorry, just kind of tailing off a little bit on the question. So that those models do exist. It's not something that I'm particularly working with in terms of from an environmental point of view. For me, it's more down to more the patient level. But yes, as you said, Natalie, like that could potentially be linked. So you don't normally see postcode data and patient level information, but we can get regions, and within that can link to then bigger data sets where we link the region level data to that, and then we can make some slightly more complicated models, to be honest. But so that they are possibilities.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you very much. We've had quite a few AI ones coming up. So Paula, someone wants to know how old the patient data you're looking at is.
Again, it varies. It varies in terms of what's available and what you can get access to. We're definitely in a world of existing data, especially when data has been collected at just from even a GP level. As a researcher, we would apply to access it. Our study is evaluated, and only once people are happy with it do we then get access to the data in terms of what we're doing. And so point being, it can vary, but you're looking as far as data that's almost like 20-30 years old, when the computer systems also almost started coming out. And yeah, as I say, for the rest of it, as to what I would access, it just depends on the type of study that I would be doing, but anywhere from not so much today, but maybe even a month ago to all the way up to about 20, 25, 30 years ago.
Okay, and just a bit about consent. So someone here says that they see that GPs share patient data with researchers. Does that have patient approval? As I understand it, it's all anonymized, isn't it? So you wouldn't know about individual people.
That is right, and it is, and consent is needed. I need to go back and check as to whether it's an opt-out type of an option or an opt-in. So that might need double checking. But the consent is there, and yeah, as I say, it's available to us to then use. But it would be anonymized, and we are. And generally, ethics is very careful on that level, that people can't be identified. And there are various steps that are taken out to ensure that.
Basically, we cannot use data that has not been under consent, and even with consent, it has to be anonymous.
Okay, yeah, I think that answers the question. So there does need to be consent even for anonymized data, but if you do give consent, then it will still not have anything that should identify you in any way. Okay, right, excellent. I think that covers that. So someone has said here that if you use a PPI member's data in paper for publication, do you need to retrospectively ask for consent? I'm not sure if they just mean patients or whether they do explicitly mean patients who are involved in patient and public involvement, which is normally what PPI means. So I don't know if the person who asked that wants to clarify, but I would have thought if you're working with a committee of PPI members, then they would be involved in that publication anyway, perhaps as authors. I don't know.
That's exactly right. In both of these instances, the consent's taken on the outset. So whether, I mean, from a data point of view, the consent is there because we wouldn't be able to use the data if it wasn't. So that's from a PPI point of view, getting involved in a research study, you're part of the research team, and you're, as I say, you're as much as a valued member as any member of that team, and going forward your input. And so with that, the consent is taken again at the beginning because you're, as I say, with that discussion about your involvement, it's all kind of included in there.
Okay, and then one, I think probably we're going to have to wind it up there actually, because I've just noticed the time. So I'm going to hand over to Jen, but I can still see we've got questions coming in. So if you are still interested, if you want to continue to email those questions, I think probably to the Equator email list, if that's all right, Jen. And I'm going to just hand you over to Jen now.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to Patricia and Paula for sharing two of the researcher projects that are happening in our Equator and methodology research team. One of those projects was very methods focused, that was Paula's. One of those projects was very reporting focused, and that was Patricia's. And actually, we have loads of other research projects going on that are similarly either to do with how research gets done, the methods, and improving how that gets done, giving good guidance to researchers, or how is research reported? How does it end up in journal articles? Is it useful for other researchers? And again, giving guidance on that. So that's the kind of work that Equator does. And you can get involved directly in Paula and Patricia's projects. We've dropped their email addresses into the chat. But more generally, as the Equator sort of reporting and methods research team, we are really interested in getting patients and the public involved in all of our research projects. It's something that we've been really interested in doing. And that's what we're doing today, is this is the first step for us. So what we're planning to do is set up a general Equator PPI group under the OpenArms umbrella. So effectively, that will be a space for folks to hear about research projects like Patricia's and Paula's, and to get involved if they'd like to. We are at the very early stages, as some of you have been hearing, because you've been asking very specific and very sensible questions about how we're going to do this. And the answer is we're right at the beginning stages. We will be following the OpenArms model. So we're going to be following the existing guidance that is out there about how to do this correctly. It'll include things like good consent. It'll include things like looking after your data really well. And it'll include things like payment, definitely. But in general, what is the next step for us? Essentially, if you are interested in any of these sorts of things, effectively helping us figure out how we can integrate PPI in our methods and reporting research, so right at the beginning, helping us figure out how that process should look so that we have a good process when people are being invited, so they get sensible information. If you're interested in giving ideas for research projects, if you're interested in input into the research projects under development, if you're interested in getting involved in doing the research or getting involved in sharing the research results, any of those things, if that's something that you say, actually, I'd love to get involved in how we do and report research, the methods around that, then we'd love for you to be involved in our group, our Equator PPI group. You have two options. If you are already on the OpenArms mailing list, you don't need to do anything else, because once we have our group details set up, we'll send an invitation through OpenArms, nothing else for you to do. If you're not on the OpenArms list and you reached this webinar through another route, excellent, welcome, really glad to have you. Please just drop us an email. I'd like you to just send a blank email. We don't need any information, just literally a blank email, subject line, Equator PPI, and send that to equator@csm.ox.ac.uk. And I'll pop that into a chat in the chat one more time now. I popped it in a couple of minutes ago. So just a blank email, subject line Equator PPI to equator@csm.ox.ac.uk. And we will send you effectively the invitation to join our proper mailing list once that is all set up. So hopefully that's answered a few of those questions about what's going to happen next. And we're really hoping to see many of you be involved in this, and we will be sending all of the information through OpenArms as well. So if you're on OpenArms, you don't need to do anything. We'll contact you through there. But yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to Patricia and Paula. Hopefully you've all really enjoyed that, hearing a little bit about their research. I'll hand back to Natalie.
Thank you very much, Jen. And I know a couple of our speakers are beavering away in the background answering some of your questions by text. But as I say, if you have got burning questions, do feel free to just send those to the Equator email if there is a specific question you want answered. Obviously, if you just want to join the mailing list, follow the instructions as previously detailed. So I'd really like to thank all of our speakers. I'm sorry we haven't managed to cram everything in terms of answers to all your questions, but it's really good to see that everyone is interested enough to ask questions. Thanks again to everyone. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you all for coming, and thank you all for asking questions. And hopefully we'll see some of you in February.